kick it off. Thanks everyone for joining us on our 6th birthday SEM.js event here. Yeah. So 6 years and still going strong, and as thanks to all of you and all of the people who step up to give talks, our speakers. We couldn't do it without speakers. And we're going to have a really cool, fun time today with our lightning talks. This is always a really, really fun event. If you need the Wi-Fi username and password, it's ForgeGuest. No constraints, all lowercase with 2 exclamation points. It's also on the board back there if you haven't gotten it already. These are the ones of us who sort of help put this together. It takes quite a few of us to organize SEM.js. If you are interested in helping out, we could always use more. If you want to send us a note at hello@semjs.org, that would be awesome. Or you can also just email us to get in touch if you have any questions or have ideas or anything like that. I will apologize for the TV. We didn't realize we weren't going to have a projector here. Can everyone kind of see so far okay? There's a TV over here as well, if that's easier for you. There may be one in the back. I'm not sure that one's hooked up or not. But yeah, sorry about that. We're doing the best we can here, though. We do have a code of conduct. The full thing is at coc.semjs.org. I encourage everyone to read it. Everyone should follow it. Essentially, it just says like everyone is respectful to each other. We don't tolerate any kind of harassment. If you need to talk to anybody about code of conduct or any problems, feel free to talk to me or any of the other organizers here of SEM.js. I mentioned we couldn't do this without speakers. We also couldn't do this without our sponsors. It takes an awesome group of sponsors to give us a place to meet, give us food, and a few other things as well, like swag and the AV help. We're live streaming on YouTube right now. There will be a recording as well. As soon as this is over, that'll be up. So if you want to share that with someone who couldn't attend, that's a great way to do that. So do you want to come up and say a little bit about, I guess you're Accenture now, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
How you guys doing? I'm Jason Dinkelman. I'm the PO sponsor for the SEM.js meetup. I'm an account artist in here with Pillar/Accenture. We do lots of software consulting with different clients around the country, and we're hiring. So if you're interested in looking for a gig, you can hit me up. Aaron, anybody else over here. So I'm going to be taking off in a while. I got to fly out of town. But
all right. Well, thank you.
Cool. Thanks for coming, guys.
So Pillar/Accenture, they're great. They always give us food and a place to meet. We have AV support from Symphono. They help out with some of the supplies for the recording. And then we also have a special treat today. Nutshell has provided cupcakes and macarons in the intermission. So if you are interested in being a sponsor of SEM.js, or your company is interested, send us a note at sponsors@semjs.org, and we'll be happy to take your assistance. So we have a SEM.js, the main event is once a month. It's on the second Monday of every month at 6 p.m. So the date can change, but the day of the week is always the same. And the location changes as well. So check the meetup.com event notice to find out where it will be. Next month, I believe, will be at Barracuda, but double check that. And we're going to have Websockets and methods for real-time data streaming. It was one of the very first SEM.js talks 6 years ago, and Steve has agreed to kind of refresh it and give it to us again, since a lot of us are new and weren't able to attend that sort of original meetup. Oh, and also, yeah, if you're interested in speaking, we have a few slots left open for the summer. Feel free to get in touch with us at speakers@semjs.org. Even if it's your first time talking, that's fine. We can walk you through it and give you tips and hints and review your slides, things like that. We're always happy to help. And it's a great practice if you are thinking of presenting at a conference. This is sort of a very low pressure, low stakes way to practice your talk, or just practice speaking in front of a crowd. So something to consider. We also have a study group once a month. This comes 2 weeks after the main event, so 2 weeks from tonight, we will have a study group. It's much more of an informal event, an informal setting. People get together, they bring projects they're working on, they bring problems, they have questions. People come to sort of mentor and help others. It's a very relaxed and fun time just to sort of hack on whatever you want to hack on. So I'd encourage everyone to sign up for that. The next one will be June 24th, right here at the Forge. So I like to also sort of include some other meetups here that are either run by people who are in our group or sort of related to the things we do. Rochester Full Stack is a really cool group that does a lot of cool talks. Spencer, or do you want to give a pitch for this one?
Sure, yeah. So this is, I'm Spencer, by the way. I'm one of the co-founders of Rochester Full Stack. We usually meet the day after this meetup. That's the second Tuesday of every month. We meet in Rochester at the Rochester Firehouse. Find us on meetup.com. We have a talk on getting more out of APIs, how you can better build and maintain and distribute your APIs with Caroline Jobe, my wife, is giving that talk, so you should all come because it's going to be awesome. Yeah, so you can check back up. We do a lot of different things, not just JavaScript, but all over the map. So if you're in the area and you're looking for a fun meetup, I suggest you check us out. Thanks.
Awesome, yeah. Is there anyone here from Ann Arbor JSX? Yeah.
Sorry, so I'm Max. I'm one of the co-founders of Ann Arbor JSX. So next week, we're not actually conflicting with Full Stack. Next week, Tuesday, we have David Korshid coming in, doing a talk on state machines and React and that kind of stuff. So we're over at, we meet typically at the TDA offices, which is 5th floor, right above Bar Louie, at Division and Liberty. So come see that next week.
Awesome, thank you. Is there any other cool events going on that anyone knows of, or anything else in the community you want to? Yeah.
There's an Angular group, I believe it's Wednesday.
Okay, I missed that one. Yeah, I'll have to include that one. We're going to try to get her out here to do an Angular talk as well. So, Kim, the organizer of that. What version is the group? Is it Angular or AngularJS? Right, that's the difference. I think.
Maybe.
All right, cool. Check meetup.com for that one then. Yeah, Andrew.
Is this general announcement?
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Andrew Cooper, and I started a podcast about JavaScript. A couple weeks ago, I started Learn JavaScript. It's kind of an experiment because when I would listen to podcasts about programming, it tended to be a bunch of guys that were just kind of talking about stuff in general, get some opinions and get some news snippets. But I wanted to learn more programming techniques and learn more programming stuff. So this podcast is kind of an experiment. I'm reading the JavaScript documentation from Mozilla Developer Network. Each section is just a section of JavaScript documentation. So it's kind of an experiment, really dry. This is probably not something that really lends itself to being learned that way, but at the same time, you could learn another language and otherwise waste of time. So I know it's on iTunes. I've tried to list the RSS feed with all the major podcast directories. It doesn't show up in my Google Podcast app, but Google told me that it was in the Play Store music, under music. Cool. So you should be able to find it. I encourage you to check it out and post a link to it, help spread the word.
All right, thank you. Cool. Anything else? Okay. So another thing that we do here with SEM.js is try to connect all of you with jobs. And that's why a lot of times sponsors will sponsor us, is that they get on our list of people that we send out to job hunters. So if you are not completely satisfied with what you're doing now and you want to sort of see what else is out there, what other opportunities you might be able to fit into, send us a note. We'll get back in touch with you with a list of our current sponsors, just a little description about who they are, what they do, and then you can choose whether you want us to make introductions with any of those companies. That's how I got my current job at Nutshell. It does work. I can vouch for that. So I encourage all of you to send us an email if you are interested in a new job. So people want to hire you. All right, afterwards we all go to MASH, just to talk, get to know each other, have a good time. So feel free to join us there. We'll kind of usually congregate here for just a few minutes afterwards and then sort of head out. So stick around if you're interested in that. So we have a fun event today. We've got 10 lightning talks lined up. We're going to do 5, have a little break, sort of absorb everything that we've learned and heard about, chat a little bit, eat cupcakes and sweets, and then we'll come back here and do another 5. And I'm going to try something new this time and sort of give a little introduction to the speakers as they come up. We'll see how that goes. So our first talk here is from Mark. Mark developed Vora and React Native over the last 2 years and then recently sold it. His favorite books include Anti-Fragile and Skin in the Game by Nassim Taleb. Mark is now a self-employed developer and enjoys lifting weights, reading, and playing pickup sports. So everyone give a warm welcome to Mark.
Thanks for the introduction, Ian. Thanks everyone for coming out. So 2 years ago I started building Vora, and then about 3 months ago I sold it. So this is kind of the story of building Vora. So initially some background on fasting. I've been doing this diet for about 5 years. Basically the scientific theory is that it's a healthy stress on the body, just like exercise. So your body is built to be exercised, it's built to be fasted. Humans just didn't have a constant food supply all the time. And the theory is that you should be in a state of hunger. There's processes that happen while you're hungry. And if you're never hungry, you're not letting that happen. So kind of the same thing as exercise, that it's a healthy stress on your body. And then just like other trackers, accountability, discipline, having a tracker, helps you hit your goals. So I started fasting and using an existing app, and it didn't have all the features I wanted, and it looked pretty doable for a side project, so I decided to dive in. So in May of 2017, I started on it, never used JavaScript, React Native, and mobile apps. In a month, I was able to write a V1 and get it on the App Store. So that's just a testament to how good these technologies are and how fast you can build stuff in JavaScript. So here's a basic description of the app. When you first download, it's just empty. It's just a timer with a bar chart that grows. It hits you with a notification when you finish your fast. And just over time, you accumulate data. And yeah, pretty simple app. And then you can publish your fast to a feed. People can follow you, like, and comment on your fast. So over time, after using it, I started to build out the pro version. So the pro version has these advanced analytics. So these analytics are like cumulative fasting time per week, and then a heat map that kind of shows your daily behavior. So these visualizations were built in D3.js. This visualization in particular is probably one of the coolest things I've programmed. You can kind of see on Saturday I'd eat breakfast early, so I might have like a bigger eating window on Saturday. I always went out for breakfast on Saturday. And then I'd like make up for the weekend on Monday with like a shorter eating window. So I think I got kind of lucky when I first published it. There wasn't any good apps on the Android store. I pushed it up and people just started searching for it and downloading it. So probably not like a standard path, but I think I got kind of lucky with that. So at the time of the sale, it had 273,000 registered users. We did 444,000 fasts and lost 218,000 pounds. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I used Firebase in the back end, and I could just run analytics on it, and it's pretty cool to be able to say that people did this on my app. So eventually I stopped using it. I realized that it wasn't really affecting my behavior at all. And then there's really a lot of fierce competition. Companies, venture-backed companies would be like, would write apps just kind of for fun. They'd have like their main company would be like healthcare, IT, or whatever, and they were like, oh, a fasting app, just bump one out. And then I just really couldn't keep up with teams that were competing with me. So I posted it for sale on a service called Transfer Slot, which I highly recommend. It worked great. A startup called OliveX from Hong Kong reached out to me, and then over the course of a few weeks, we agreed on a deal, transferred all the assets over, and sold it. So yeah, that's the story of Vora. I'm now a self-employed software developer, so if you want to chat about a project with me, just come find me after. Thank you.
Tried to sneak some pizza, it was too fast.
It's a lightning talk.
Yeah, it was a lightning talk. Awesome. Now I don't have my introduction, but Doug Lance, you want to come up? You can introduce yourself. Sorry about that. Yeah, everyone give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Ian, for not introducing me. So yeah, title of this talk is Write Once, Run Anywhere with Vue.js and Quasar. How many people here have used Vue.js before? How many people have used React? I knew it. Why don't you guys use Vue? It's great. Okay, so yeah, I think I have found the holy grail of computer programming. Just writing something once and running it everywhere. So first, I'm Doug Lance. I'm a full stack developer at Arbor Moon Software. It's an app consulting company here in Ann Arbor. You can find me on Twitter. So yeah, Quasar is a framework built with Vue.js that makes it super easy to build for all of the major platforms. Essentially what it's doing is using web tools to build a bundle that is either served with Electron or Cordova to mobile apps. And Cordova is just like essentially a mobile app that you can download, but it has a web view that just displays your website in that web view on the mobile app. There's some other interesting things with plugins and stuff, but that's the big picture. So why should you use Quasar? I mean, there's a lot of other options. All of you guys are React Native, React developers. React Native's really great. You can't deliver React Native to every platform yet. So yeah, Quasar gives you this rich component library of all of these styled components that you can put together. You just like you're building a normal Vue application. You just pull in what you need, and when you build your app and deploy it to a particular target, whether it's mobile or desktop or web, you get a great experience with essentially every UI element that you could use. It doesn't cover everything, but if you're building a cross-platform app, it covers basically everything you need. It has great documentation. It's really easy to learn. I just recently built a project with Quasar. Didn't ever use it before. I built stuff with Vue before, of course, but the documentation's great. It gives you these interactive code pens that you can jump into really easily and mess with and tweak and figure out what you want to do with it. It has hot module reload on every platform, so you can have it running on your phone and change something in the code, and then on your phone it doesn't have to rebuild. Well, it kind of does, but right on your phone it updates almost in real time. It's great for productivity. It comes with a CLI that allows you to do basically all of the functions that you need to do. CLI is great. You should use it if you're building something that targets a lot of platforms, but it doesn't need anything that's super precise to any one platform. So if you're like building an ARKit app for iOS, I would not recommend using Quasar. But if your app is something like your app that you demonstrated, that's perfect for it. You can use D3, you can do everything you did, and deploy to all these different platforms. So yeah, to use Quasar, all you do is install the CLI globally with npm or yarn. You run Quasar create, and we're not going to have time to watch this GIF, but you just answer a few questions, and it'll build out the project files for you. And then you just run Quasar dev, and then pick whichever platform you want to target, and it boots up a server. Looks like this. It has hot module reload, so you just go in there, start working on it, build whatever app you want to build using Vue. It comes out of the box. It comes styled with Stylus, which is like a CSS processor, whatever. I had never used Stylus before. I had never heard of Stylus before. It's pretty intuitive. You don't have to use it, but that's what it comes with. Then if you want to deploy your app, you just type Quasar build. It builds it. You can deploy to the App Store with what it delivers to you, or host it on a website, or do whatever you want with it. So yeah, super easy, fun to use. If you want to learn more, you can go to quasar.dev, and if you have any questions or anything, you can follow me on Twitter. My DMs are open, so yeah.
All right, so up next, if you want to come up and start plugging in your computer, we have Steve Schwartz, who's the owner of Alpha Django.
That's fine.
Oh, that's.
I have an old one. I have a 2012.
Oh, I thought you wanted a dongle for a new one.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
I should have specified. That's pretty.
No,
common.
that's fine. Well, how about you introduce yourself then while I get that pulled up and ready.
All right, no problem. I'm Steve Schwartz. I'm a CTO and co-founder of a startup in town called Genomenon that does genome interpretation software for diagnosing and treating cancer and other inheritable disease, and also a consultancy called Alpha Django, where we act as CTO and development team for hire for early stage startups.
Okay. Understand. All right, I'm going to let you start this up because I don't know how to present it.
All right.
Is it coming? All right, cool. All right, everyone, warm welcome.
All right, so this is exciting. The 6th anniversary of SEM.js. Well, sort of. It's actually, the 6th anniversary was technically in May. Like I said, I'm Steve from Genomenon and Alpha Django. For the 6th anniversary, I thought it would be fun to look back at the Twitter feed of SEM.js. And I actually found that the first tweet ever from the SEM.js Twitter account was about my presentation, which was 6 years ago to the day. It was June 10th, 2013. A couple things that are really interesting about this is, you might not know this, but on Meetup, SEM.js is just over 1,800 members currently. Back then, we were all pretty psyched to be at 200 members. And we were really excited about the turnout to the presentation I gave, that 45 people show up. While I have this up, I should also point out that this is where I found out that I am talented and wicked smart. Both of those tweets were retweeted, so you know it's true. I actually don't remember. The retweets might have been me. Anyway, my presentation, like I said, 6 years ago to the day on June 10th, but it actually wasn't the first. That recognition goes to a buddy of mine, Jay Harris, who is amazing, now lives in Las Vegas. He did a presentation called Make Node.js Package Become Famous. So for the award for first presentation ever at SEM.js, Jay gets that. My presentation was on Websockets. I thought it'd be pretty fun to give that presentation again in honor of the 6th anniversary. Part of that presentation, I made a demo application to demo Websockets. It's a general purpose WebSocket network. It's a really bare bones application that has a server component, a client component, and a very tiny pluggable plugin architecture. Basically what it does is you create plugins that you load into the index page, the client. You can interact with the page, you send messages to the server, and then the server just fans those messages out to everyone who's connected to the page. Like I said, bare bones. It comes with an index.html on the front end, which gives you a little navigation bar at the top, an event console below that that's in the page, and then a playground area at the bottom. It's about 70 lines of code total of HTML. It has a client.js, which provides your WebSocket connection to the server, a global message object with some convenience functions in there, and then the generic function calling for the plugins. And then on the back end, it uses Node. It has a Node server called server.js. The name of the file is server.js, not like a framework or anything. And that provides the WebSocket connection on the back end, the message fanning, and error handling. The whole server is about 100 lines of code, but like half those lines of code are error handling and lots of code comments, because everyone knows code comments are a sufficient substitute for robustness. This is the main part of the server. As you can see here, it just collects the connections that connect, or it collects the messages here that come in from the WebSocket connections, and then it figures out if it should send the message to a specific client or to all the clients, and that's basically it. It just forwards the message to all the clients. So what do the plugins or the clients do on the front end? They basically, for WebSocket connections, you're just sending strings back and forth. A common convention, obviously, is to send strings that are stringified JSON. So you just do a bunch of JSON marshalling and unmarshalling to send structured data back and forth. This is an example payload object for the WebSocket demo that I created. It has an event type and then optionally a target if you only want to send that event to one other client on the platform. One of the convenience messages in the global message object is log. So you can see this is the event log area of the index.html. Below that is the playground area. Every client that connects gets a numbered rectangle. That number is your client ID to the server. And then if you call this message.log convenience function, it acts very similar to console.log, except that it logs your message in the log window on the client. Just like that. So the application comes with 3 base plugins to make the whole thing work. They are called connected.js, connection.js, and close.js. Connected.js is what allows you to connect to the server via WebSocket connection as soon as you load the page. Connection.js is what notifies you of every other client that connects to the same server, and then close.js notifies you when any of those connections are closed. You can see examples in the event.log of each one of those things functioning. Connected.js causes the event log to say you are connected as client 1. Connection.js alerts you that client 2 and client 3 have joined. And then connected.js tells you client 2 has left the session, which is why you only see 1 and 3 on the bottom there in the playground area. Then I provided a couple of just playful plugins that aren't required for the application to work, but just sort of demo plugins. One is called click.js. All it does is when you click any square that's not yours, it sends an event message to that person that they've been clicked by you. So if you click on 2, then client 2 gets a message that says you've been clicked by client 6. I have another plugin that's pretty fun called follow.js, and this is meant to sort of showcase the power of WebSocket connections. That basically being that you open a persistent connection and then you just shuttle messages back and forth without having to reestablish the connection or do the HTTP handshake all over again, which means you can do things really inefficiently if you want. So for example, this one, if you click your own square, it enables follow mode, and then your square follows your cursor around the page, and it'll make your square follow the cursor on everyone else's page as well. So everyone else can see your square moving around following your cursor. And the way that I implemented this module is I literally just bound to the cursor movement event in JavaScript. And on every move event, I send the X and Y coordinates to the server. The server fans those X and Y coordinates out. And then all the clients just update your square to the new X and Y coordinates. And you can literally see the animations move around. I was going to show you a quick live demo. Don't worry about that. So anyway, the point being, next month I will actually just re-give that talk because recycling is good for the environment. And so what I would say to you is, if you want, bring your laptop, because what I'll do is I'll actually pull the WebSocket demo up here on the screen. I'll have it on the local Wi-Fi network. Everyone else can connect to it on the local Wi-Fi network, and we can just sort of play with each other. And if you build your own plugin that is as easy as what you see here and submit a pull request before next month, I'll just install it in the app. So we'll pull the demo up with whatever plugins people have created live. And that's it.
All right, next we've got Mark, our cameraman, so he's coming around. He's a software engineer at Symphono, passionate about everything software with some gardening and cycling sprinkled in. So everyone give a nice warm welcome to Mark. Is that not the right link?
No, how do I, oh, full screen, okay. All right, so this is actually an interactive talk, so you see that URL, please, if you have a phone, computer, I would love everyone to connect. It'll be more fun the more people we have. We're gonna see how much Firebase credit we can burn through today. That's the URL. It's gonna be on every slide, so don't worry if you don't get it now, but Ian gave me, he said 30 seconds extra for my lightning talk, so we could all connect and have some fun. This is basically gonna be a little game where I'm gonna throw out some features, and you're gonna guess if this is part of the web platform or gonna be coming to the web platform soon, basically usable even behind a flag or an experimental browser, or you think I just totally made this up if it's just BS. So there are going to be two buttons basically you're presented with. You can be a believer, you think it's coming, you think it's available, or you can be a skeptic. Things that don't count. Babel plugins, you can do anything in a Babel plugin that doesn't count. Anything that's in a proposal, or like I said, maybe I just made it up. So, all right. So that's what you're going to see on your screen. You have two different buttons. Hopefully everyone's connecting. Like I said, I did not load test this. So we're about to find out. And do not guess on the basis of the code sample, guess on the basis of the concept. The code samples are mostly made up. Okay, cancelable promises. So imagine you create a new promise, you can then later call cancel. Does this cancel API exist? So throw in your guesses now. I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. Think hard. Okay, natively. Remember, this is native. Behind a flag, experimental browsers count, you know, like nightly builds, like Canary and stuff. All right, we got a believer. I tricked y'all. This is a withdrawn proposal. This is not landed yet. This is a very controversial proposal, and there's a ton of further reading. I'm going to share the slides later, and this is actually kind of this talk is really just to compile a lot of this stuff together. So a lot of good reading. All right, pattern matching. All right, so imagine you make like an API request, and then you have this syntax over here where you have a switch case basically, and you can follow some code path. Do you guys believe this is real? You can vote now as I talk, or do you believe this is fake? Got a lot of believers in here. Okay. Firebase is performing pretty well, I have to say. This was also just a fun experiment with Firebase. I never used it before. So, as just a proposal, I made that one up too. Okay. There is a Haskell-like Babel plugin because Haskell has pattern matching. There's also a TC39 proposal. I think it's at like stage 1 or something. I don't know, but it's not natively available yet. Standard library module. So imagine again, this is just a kind of sample, code sample. Where you have a standard built-in module that you can import from here. I just made up standard.io, but something to this effect. So you could think of like, you know, the math library or fetch, stuff like that could come from here. We're leaning towards skeptic. Okay, this is real. This is real. This is behind a Chrome origin trial, which basically lets you use experimental features now. Google came up with something called KV storage, which is key value storage, which is a replacement for local storage, and they had to invent this concept to support that concept, as well as something called import maps, but it's in further reading. I'm not going to dwell on it. Okay, immutable data structures. Native immutable data structures. Basically think of immutable.js, but in the browser, available, ready for you to use. Think this is real? Got about, oh, 50-50. Okay, all right. I made that up, but it would be cool to have, right? Brendan Ike actually talks about this in a great article called Harmony of My Dreams. It's really good reading, and he wrote that about 8 years ago. Face detection API, hardware accelerated. Basically, imagine newing up a face detector. You give it a stream or an image, and it passes you back the faces that are in it with some certain confidence. Believe? Okay, you guys got this right. This is real. This is behind a Chrome flag. It's generalized as the shape detection API because they want to do things with like QR codes, barcodes, that sort of thing, but faces is one of them. Okay, native authentication API. So essentially imagine talking to a system keychain or doing federated identity a little bit easier. Again, this is just a sample code that I came up with. Do you think this is somehow available today? You guys think, wow. Oh, we got skeptics. Okay. All right, we're gonna go. I made this up. But I made this up first, and then I Googled it, and I learned that there's actually something in the works for this. It's a really good read, and I think once it does land, in like 5 years or something like that, it'll be really cool when no one's using it anymore. So, standard object hashing. Think of get hash code in Java, where it generates some alphanumeric string. You can compare them together. Is something like this available today? You think it's real? Okay, a couple more seconds. I think we're leaning on believers. I made that up. There's probably a library for it. I don't know. There's no further reading on that one. You gotta have to search the NPM modules. All right, native JSX syntax. So imagine not having to use a Babel plugin. This would output some XML document that could be manipulated by a VDOM library like React, for example. Do you think this is somehow available today? Without Babel, remember that doesn't count. Okay, a few more seconds. Wow, we're 50-50. Okay, I made that up totally. But I made that up, and then I learned Mozilla actually tried this at one time, but it was before the time of React, so it didn't quite catch on. Nowadays, people would be jumping all over that. All right, relative time formatting. So imagine you generating a human-readable string, like 1 day ago, 5 seconds ago, something you might see on like a social network, like someone posted 5 seconds ago. Do you think this is natively available and not through a library? A library does not count. All right, we got... this is real, and actually Google I/O, they just talked about this. Array index ranges. So imagine a syntax like this where you can basically do a slice where you grab a set of this array. A lot of other languages have this, Python for example. Do you believe this is usable today in a browser, even behind a flag counts? And on this one, wow, 50-50 again. Okay, I stole this idea from Python, but it would be cool to have this, I really think. For all the array manipulation we do in JavaScript would be great. The truth is out there. I compiled lots of links together if you want to stay on the bleeding edge, as I love to, and thank you for your time.
All right, so next up we have Chris Cain. He's a software engineer, engineer in a nutshell, born and raised here in Ann Arbor. Avid soccer and ultimate frisbee player, and has 2 cats. Everyone give Chris a warm welcome.
All right, this is not an interactive talk. I apologize. That was a ton of fun, though. All right, I'm Chris. I work with Ian at Nutshell, and I'm going to talk about automatic type generation with GraphQL. Lightning talk, so I'm not going to go into GraphQL. We'll say it's a query language for your API. We use it at Nutshell. We really love it. And then this talk will feature some flow, which is a static type checker for JavaScript. So I love types. I love them in JavaScript, but I will say I think typing an API is hard for a couple reasons. It can be tedious. So you have a bunch of endpoints. You have to type them all. That can take a long time. It's manual work, so different endpoints have different shapes. We want to make sure we get it right when we're actually typing them. And then this can be fragile. So APIs can change, and we'll have to update all our hard work for our types. But GraphQL can help with this. So we're going to take a look at a quick example. This is an app, for example. It just lists a bunch of books, a bunch of JavaScript books. We have a title and an author for these books, and that's our entire app. This is our database for our app. This is just a JSON file of books. We got a title and an author, and our author has a first and a last name. This is our quote-unquote like GraphQL schema. This is where, and those unfamiliar with GraphQL, we sort of type what our data looks like, how we're going to query it. So we have our author type, which has a first and a last name. These are strings. We have a book, which has a title, and then an author, which is that author type from above. And then we have a query, which is sort of built into GraphQL. This is what we can actually query with our API. In this case, just a bunch of books. So this would be what our query looks like from our client. We're just going to get all of our books. Again, we're asking for our books. We want the title and an author, and within that author, we want a first and a last name. Finally, putting it all together, this is a React component that just displays our books. And we're just going to map over those book objects and display the title, and then at the bottom, we'll put the author's first and last name. So at the top here, we're typing this, and this is the flow syntax. And we're saying this component gets some props. Those props are just books, which we're saying is an array of objects. And that works for us because we made this app and we know that books have a title, and then they have an author, and that author has a first and a last name. But how can we be sure what a book is? We're just saying it's an object. And as we said, APIs can change. And this is where the automatic type generation is really important, and it's really awesome. So Apollo has these CLI tools, and Apollo is a company that's doing a lot of really cool open source work with GraphQL. They have a bunch of open source tools, and in this case, we'll be using one of their CLI tools. So I made the script really small because I don't want anyone to read it. I don't want to go into the details, but I promise you it's a short script using a couple of their command line tools. We're able to generate some really cool auto-generated flow types, and you'll have to believe me that it's simple. But this is what we get. Looks a lot like our GraphQL types that we showed earlier. At the bottom, we have our books, which is an array of this quote-unquote all books underscore books type, sort of like their auto-generated syntax they give you. That type is sort of what we expect, a title and an author. This type name is some built-in stuff that they do. And then we have our author again with our first and last name. So if we go back to our component and we import that type, now we see our books is stronger type now, right? We have an array of all books, books type. A little verbose, but it works well for us. So how does this actually benefit us? It seems like a lot of work. We know what an object is, whatever. APIs can change. And so, 6 months down the line, me or maybe someone on my team decides that, hey, it's kind of tedious that we have a first and a last name for an author. Let's just change that to a string. You just spit out the string from our API, and the clients can easily deal with that. So right, so we have just a author as a string now instead of a first and last name. We'd update our GraphQL query, so we're saying instead of requesting the first and last name from the author, since the API is different, we just want the author because that's a string. We'd run our script, and again, you could automate these scripts to run automatically. That's what we do at Nutshell. We just watch our code, and it'll rerun whenever. We actually use PHP for our GraphQL, and that works great too. But if we run that again, I have an editor plugin that yells at me when flow is breaking, but we can see that first and last name is now invalid here because the author is now a string, and we can't request that. Fix up our component, just want the book.author. If we run flow again at the bottom, we see good, we're happy, and that's that. I think at this point, I'm supposed to announce that we have cupcakes. So we're going to take a little break. I'm from Nutshell, so I get to give a 2-second spiel. We got cupcakes for everyone. Nutshell is right around the corner. We make software for small businesses. We love supporting this community. I actually found out about Nutshell through this community as well, like Ian. So yeah, thanks for being here, and enjoy the cupcakes.
We'll start back up at 7 o'clock.
All right.
Thank you.
It's great. I should have thought the time. It's probably like 4:15. I like the highlighting. So did you define particular ranges ahead of time, or are you just moving your mouse around?
Yeah, so you basically, it's really simple. You just have like a highlighting step. So you just do like 1, 2, 3, and then you say add another one, 5, 2, 7, add another one, and then I'm just arrowing through. It works really well. Does it look good? When it's yeah,
It's fading and everything.
Although that's true, they're cupcake station. Those are good cupcakes. Really, you like them? Nah, I'm not a big fan. You like macaroons?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar, like one letter.
Great job.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Was I under 5?
Yeah, you were just under.
Ooh, you timed it? Nice.
Yeah. Like 4:30 or something. Plenty of time.
Like with Quasar, you can just
That slides.com is
import it, you just run it.
really makes. I think the code by highlighting helps a lot.
Yeah.
When you don't want people to read other stuff.
They didn't used to have the like where it would like highlight separate pieces or whatever. So like I think I like Oshiyoye ran. I think my because I can't find the snapshots one in my slides.com. I think I made that one.
It's probably on YouTube, right?
Yeah, I think that might have been during the period where we weren't. But I mean, I probably have it like on my file system somewhere or in a repo or something. But it's nice also having that on slides.com like in your account to be able to just like go find like.
Yeah. This happened. What was the slide product that GitHub acquired? Ordered list. Is that what it was called?
Never heard of that.
Yeah, it was like 4 years ago now. 3 years ago. It was like redefined slide.
Yeah, we making a cupcake?
Yeah.
Paid for it.
Just like branched off. It's all Really? With the lens? You do look familiar. Let's go. Do good? I don't work on it, no. I just want everybody else to use it. The better the community, the better it will be for everybody. It's like a good deal.
I had that kind of argument with my team right now. AE's doing some like internal stop doing that because like they're getting rid of their old one. They're like everyone needs some notorious.
Yeah.
And like
No, I wasn't. I
because since they're out there, I just chose. Even with
also, you changed something.
I'm not getting used to it. Like I can use it.
So you changed the answer. Yeah. I was like, I know it's in here, and you're like, nah, just kidding. I'm like, you told me. I learned nothing from your talk. I learned like you trust you.
I learned that Firebase is fast. I was sitting there doing this, flipping
Oh,
back
you were
and
the one
forth.
that was causing the trouble.
It's like, I wanted it, yeah. I wanted it to be, you know, more exciting for going back and forth.
It was at a meeting.
It's got really beautiful. The whole time. I used to live there.
Split open my time.
Yeah.
It was super cool. I love that concept, and I wanted to use that. Because you can have participants do family friendly. You can hold the audience to it, and then throw the subject.
It'd be really easy to try.
Yeah. That was super cool.
I mean, you should the code. So the fact that you get like the public built in.
No. I do, but I don't.
Are you saying this is the tool
Like you almost have to like. And if it doesn't sell for you, if it sells for you,
Right.
Are you We messed up, Dan. I figured.
There's still plenty of cupcakes and macarons if anybody wants a second one or a third one or whatever. Go ahead. We'll get started in just another minute.
Not a fourth, though?
Fourth might be pushing it. Now, go ahead. If you can eat 4 of those, go for it. All right, you want to guess yours?
It says they would start with.
Yes, I knew it.
You might be able to get it on so if it's not like with the top of your
But like, I don't want to knock off components.
They'll probably tell you it, and then the first time you go in there.
And they'll be like, I can kind of hear you. It's good. Yeah. That one's crazy.
It's only $8 grand instead of 15.
Yeah. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
So what is Darcy doing? Oh, really?
She sells commercial lives.
Oh, nice.
She doesn't sell it. She's a designer, so when a company is like doing it all this time, they also need someone to do all of it. It's a lot of like just bogged down to all stack stuff.
Yeah. Makes sense. Probably a lot of back and forth. Yeah. It's never simple. My design is awesome.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I'll have him start 75%.
No, I'm just processing.
It's all white.
That's intentional. Yeah, the guy who died.
Cool. All right, we'll get started again.
New season's here last night.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Darcy's pretty excited.
We're watching it tonight.
All right. So we're back. We've got our next slot of 5 talks here. Hope you enjoyed the first and got a little bit of a sugar rush to sort of get your blood moving, get you woken up. So this is Spencer Jobe, who loves tinkering with JavaScript, making games, and exploring the fringes of programming. I can vouch for that. He's a co-founder of Rochester Full Stack, which is celebrating its 3-year anniversary this month. Today he'll be showing us how to create retro sound effects in JavaScript. Everyone give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, guys. I hope you enjoyed the cupcakes. I'll keep this within 5 minutes. So I'm going to talk to you about 8-bit sounds in JavaScript. And in order to do that, we have to have a crash course in audio. And we're actually going to start with how a speaker works. So in this example, we have 3 main components. We have an oscillator, we have a module that amplifies our oscillator's frequency, and we have a speaker, which is just a permanent magnet and an electromagnet. How does this work? Well, the oscillator sends a signal to the amplifier, which amplifies it. That goes into the coil, and that makes the speaker go back and forth, which then moves the air. That makes sound. This is how a speaker works. So we're cool, right? Okay, I'm done. That's it. That's sound. Just kidding. Now the JavaScript part. So JavaScript's audio components are similar to this setup. So the first thing we do is we create a new audio context. You can think of an audio context as a speaker, and then one or more of those components outlined in blue that we just kind of highlighted. So we can actually use the audio context to create an oscillator. We can then use the audio context to create a gain node, which is basically just a box that controls volume. We then set up our oscillator with two values. We set it up with the type of wave and the frequency. What that is like the shape of the wave and then how frequently that shape occurs. Then we set the volume to 1. This is a variable between 0 and 1. So you can think of this as like 0 is mute, 1 is max. We turn it all the way up. We then actually, in JavaScript, we write these like weird connect statements. So we actually connect our volume box, which we're calling gain node, to our audio context destination, which in this case is the speaker. So you can see that in the little blue dotted line there. After we connect that, we then connect our oscillator to our amplifier by calling connect on the oscillator and passing in the gain node, which is really just our volume box. At which point we say start. We tell the oscillator to start, and that actually sends in all the information, and you actually get a sound out of your speaker. Then we have to tell it to stop. So we can actually tell the oscillator, hey, look, stop after half a second. That's what we're doing there. So we're kind of like putting a little time out there. What's interesting about this is that it's yet a third thread. So this is not your graphics event loop or a set timeout or anything like that. This is a separate event timer that is rock solid for music, so you can actually time out different frequencies. And then once that's done, we're going to assign an event handler for onEnded. So when that stop finally occurs, we're going to do a couple of things. So when the timer goes off, it stops the oscillator, which stops the speaker, and then fires off our onEnded event, which then disconnects our oscillator and our amplifier, or the gain node, from everything. And then this stuff basically just gets garbage collected, and we're back to square one. And so that's essentially how you create a sound. So some things to note. One, musical notes are just frequencies. So there's several basic oscillator types, sine, square, sawtooth wave, etc. And I'll show some different examples of that. Oscillators can handle multiple notes, and you can generate a file from that audio context. So you can generate an audio stream and then send it to a file and have it download inside the browser. So if you wanted to build an audio editing software, you could use this as a soup starter. So let's go into the demos. Let's see here. This is actually Microsoft Edge Chromium version. I don't know if you guys have played around with that, but that's what this is. So I've got a simple example here. Let's see if I can pull this up in code. Okay. So here's our simple example. Kind of hard to see. Sorry about that. Let's see if we can make that a little bigger. Right. So this is kind of what we just went over in that demo. And so when we call or we hit this button, we're going to get our sine wave at 180 hertz. Not super exciting, but there it is. But you can also do other things. So let's take a look here at a multiple note example. So here we're doing a couple extra things. We're creating an array of notes, and remember, notes are just frequencies. So this is actually like I think the third and fourth octave, starting with A3. We're going to have this as a sine. This should actually say 4 notes per second. And then we actually loop through each one of our notes, and we kind of pre-assign the frequency at a particular time before the thing starts. So you can think of this as like queuing up all the notes. Here's the frequency, here's the time where I want it to occur, and here's how long I want it to occur. And so when we run that, we get the notes. Now that sounded pretty interesting, but let's change that to something else. Maybe instead of a sine wave, we'll do a triangle wave thing, which is it creates a media recorder. So if you think back to that diagram where I've got the oscillator, the volume controller, and the speaker, think about just like setting a tape recorder there. That's essentially what we're doing. So we're creating this new media recorder, and we're putting two events on here. You can kind of see it. Might be a little difficult to see there, but basically it's an on data available event. And as the audio is being played, it's going to send chunks of data to that event. You collect it in an array, and at the end you can convert it into a blob for download. And so we start the media recorder before, and then we start our oscillator as normal. And then we download, which is basically just once we have that chunk, we send it, we create a new blob, and we create a link to download it. So if we're here and we click export, it's going to play. It's also going to record and download. And they're downloaded at the bottom. So if I click on this, it'll open in whatever default thing Microsoft has. Groove Music, that's super cool. And there we go. And there's a lot more that you can do with this. Let's see if I can play back here on this. So notes are just frequencies. Those are the frequencies that we played. There are different oscillator types. The noise, you can think of like white noise, static on a television. That's a little different. You can think of it as an additional link in that chain where you have the oscillator, then you've got another kind of black box that adds noise, then you've got your volume control, then you have your speaker. And I don't have a demo for that, but it works essentially the same way. Multiple notes, I showed you that. And yeah, so that's my talk. Thanks.
All right, next we have Peter Guenther. There you go. All right. So Peter is a senior software developer with Torrance Learning in Chelsea, Michigan. He builds learning platforms for clients and integrates XAPI into e-learning, working primarily in C#, .NET, and JavaScript. Everyone give him a warm welcome.
Thank you all. I won't belabor the introduction. Thank you, Ian, for that, other than to point out I'm also a robotics coach and mentor. I've been doing high school robotics for over 15 years now, first robotics specifically, and I first got into Arduino to have another platform for the students. I was checking it out as, can we replace some of our older, smaller platforms with this? Answer was yes. And now with Johnny 5, we can also code it in JavaScript instead of the native Arduino sketch language. So Johnny 5 is not just a robotics platform, but also an Internet of Things platform. You can do a lot of different things with it. The point of my talk today is just to introduce you to it and tell you a few of the things that I really like about it. It has been around for 7 years now. It's one of the older ones, not the oldest. And it is a Node.js module. So if you're used to programming in Node, it'll be very comfortable for you. One of the things I love about it is the fact that it is very well documented with good examples. And so I was just poking around today, for instance, and this is a Mac, so the mouse is reversed. I have not played with this, but I was just checking this out. It's a great example of the documentation because, first of all, they're showing you physically how to set up the hardware. It's not just a circuit diagram, but they're showing you how to set it up. And this would actually be for animating like a robotic leg, where you have multiple joints that need to act in concert. They actually have that built into the framework, the Johnny 5 framework. So that's just, and the documentation also then has the code to go along with it. So I love the documentation. It's also got very clear API documentation, which ends up often being very important, and it is the top JavaScript robotics project on GitHub. So there's a lot of different maker boards out there. If you're not familiar with these, I'm not going to be able to tell you all about them in 5 minutes. A lot of these are Arduino boards, so they're the same family of board, that top line, but that's not all the Johnny 5 supports. It also supports the variety of Raspberry Pis. There's a PC Arduino out there. The Beagle board is shown here, and also some of the Intel boards as well. On a lot of these boards, they're microcontrollers. They're not a full-fledged processor. They're not going to be able to run Node.js, so you still need a computer. That's one of the disappointing things about Johnny 5. But there are a variety of boards that do have the processors, the Raspberry Pi, the Intel boards, and so forth, where it's got a Linux environment and you can actually run your Node server right on the board, and you don't need a host computer as well. If you do need a host computer, you can do it wirelessly through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, so you don't have to have a tether there the whole time. So to learn about Johnny 5, for a Rochester Full Stack presentation a couple months ago, I located this eLegu smart robot car kit for best $60 I've ever spent, really. It's an incredible set of hardware. You know, it's a bunch of cheap Chinese components, all made by the same company, but they work, and they work reliably, and the parts are really machined well. I was incredibly happy with this purchase, and it's controlled by an Arduino. As I went along, so I didn't have to have that tether, I then added a Raspberry Pi on the back, so it's actually hosting the web server back there, and the Arduino is doing the grunt work controlling the motors. And then that blue thing in the middle is a power control converter so that I can run the Raspberry Pi off the battery pack and no wires running off the robot whatsoever. Was not planning on a TV today, so I apologize about the smallness of the code. Just to give you a taste of it, you can see I'm requiring the node module there, and then I'm setting bottom of the left column, top of the right column. I'm setting up 2 motors. All these maker boards have a set of pins, and depending on your hardware, you're wiring the pins in different directions. For that car that I just showed you, this ends up being the way I set up the pins. For this whole project, this was the hardest thing. Because the motor controller was a little bit unusual, I had to do a lot of trial and error to figure out that, oh, this is actually, there's a 3rd pin there. It's not just the 2 pins that's more typical. Other thing I love about Johnny 5, you can see near the bottom on the right side, is it has a built-in REPL. So once you get your Node server running, you can actually do interactive stuff at the command line, and you can actually trial and error, and what happens if I run the motor this way? What happens if I run the motor that way? Setting up a proximity sensor. This was the ultrasonic or the distance sensor you saw on the front of that car. Also very straightforward. Just have to identify what brand or style of sensor it is and what pin it's connected to, and it goes from there. And then you can set up event handlers, so when it changes, I can check, is it measuring less than 6 inches? If it is, I'm going to run my completed method, and that's going to set a complete variable so that it won't do this again. For that car, I did a couple different control schemes. 3rd control scheme I'd like to spend a little time on is actually a tilt sensor to control from a mobile device. But that's actually the web page that the robot's putting out there, and you can control over the web. Few lessons learned. Second one's the most important. Always test your electronics with a multimeter first. If you're Canadian, you can use a multimeter instead. But I almost fried the Raspberry Pi twice because I took things on faith. In the one case, I was just wrong about my understanding. In the second case, the power converter was totally lying to me about the voltage, and I would have fried the Pi, so I saved $35 by testing first. Second main lesson learned is that it really helps to know your platform a little bit. So the fact that I did know Arduino and the fact that I had some sample code in Arduino to go in and figure out how does this robot work was very, very helpful to then translate it and do more with the JavaScript. So I'll share these slides on the meetup comments afterwards. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Next we've got Brandon Lyons. He's a front-end developer currently working for GE Aviation. His interest is primarily on the front end using Vue.js. Is familiar with using Python and Node.js for back-end APIs. When not coding, he enjoys biking, gaming, going to concerts, and visiting new places. Everyone give it up for Brandon.
All right, thanks. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about automatic semicolon insertion in JavaScript. That was supposed to not be there. So, wait. I think you have the wrong.
Can you refresh?
Nope, none of my slides are here.
What is that? Yeah. Do you know the, one second, go to my email.
Just a second.
Do you want to swap out with someone else and then you can go back to your laptop? And, all right, so false start. We're gonna move ahead to the next presentation, and we'll refresh the slides. It sounds like. So next up we have Kunle and his team. So Kunle and Dan are what are they? Full stack engineers at Ford and Dearborn. If you guys want to come on up. And Martin is a software engineer at Chrysler and Auburn Hills. So let's give it up for Kunle, Dan, and Martin.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey everybody, my name's Kunle.
I'm Dan, and we have Martin here helping us out today.
Hey guys.
And we're here to talk about sharing live code with VSCode Live Share, new plugin.
Yeah. So Kunle and I, we work for Ford Smart Mobility. We are building fleet solutions for large commercial fleets and autonomous vehicles right now. We practice extreme programming, which is kind of odd. Anybody heard of extreme programming? Any hands? Okay.
Yep, quick overview. Extreme programming is just a relatively newer paradigm. It involves pair programming, test-driven development, quick iterations, a lot of communication, just overall trying to make cleaner, better code.
So collaboration and mentorship is kind of a big part of our culture. We have right now 3 FCGs, those are Ford College graduates, and 1 intern. And in order to mentor and collaborate, we pair program 100% of the time, which has led us to doing some experimentation with pair programming in VSCode.
So VSCode, I'm sure most of us have used it already. VSCode is an open source IDE. It's very lightweight. It's created by Microsoft. It's built on Electron, and it's free. And they recently added the live share functionality, which allows you to code together at the same time, collaboratively.
So yeah, live share allows you to share an IDE, so you can share your text editor and see where somebody's actually working and writing code. You can see the cursor. You share a console, so if you type in console commands, you can see what console commands are being typed in. If you're hosting a web app, you can share the app as well, and so if I'm running the app, I can, on the other machine, go to like localhost 8080 and see the app. And then there's text and voice chat integrated into it via Slack and Discord. I personally use Discord.
How it works, really it's super simple. If you already have Visual Studio Code, you're already 50% of the way there. Just download the plugin from the extension store. You set up you either sign in with your Microsoft account or your GitHub account, whichever you're more comfortable with. And then you do the same on your friend's computer. And then create a session, have them log in, and before you know it, you're coding together.
So we're going to really quickly show you a demo here. This is an app that I actually built, pair programming with a friend of mine in Florida. And we basically live code share with VS Code, and we chat and collaborate using Discord. And so you'll notice that now we kind of already connected because it takes a little bit to connect. So for the sake of time, we're kind of already up and running. But you'll notice that there's an actual chat window that shows you, when people enter and exit, and you can actually chat with each other. I've had as many as 20 collaborators in a session with me as we were coding, so it's pretty powerful. Let's go take a look at the app here. So you'll notice that both Martin and Kunle here have an instance of the app. It's kind of running in their own computer, so it's kind of local to them. But if Kunle were to go ahead and like delete the color picker, for example, we'll see the hot reloader run on both his machine and Martin's machine. Awesome. So that's live share. We can kind of show you real quick in the console as you, can we go back to the console here? As Kunle types something in the console, you can see it in Martin's console as well, which is really, really cool. So yeah, we pair program for Ford, and we think VSCode LiveShare has a ton of potential for mentoring and collaboration.
Thank you. John's going to come out from behind the curtain. Give his next talk. He didn't give me a bio. He's one of the organizers of SEM.js. He's been here probably the longest of any of the organizers who are still with us. So he's got some great experience and helps us out a ton. So if everyone can give John a nice warm welcome.
I'm trying to double duty over here. Alright, I think that's going to work. So, today I'm talking about FPV drone racing, which you're probably asking FPV drone racing JavaScript, what's going on here. It's a bit of a stretch, but I'll explain later. I'm just going to go with it. So just kind of curious, how many of you guys are familiar with FPV drone racing? You ever heard of it, seen it on ESPN, DRL, things like that? All right. So a little bit about who I am. So I am a drone racer. I've been drone racing for about 2.5 years. That is me in the middle there. If you guys have watched DRL, if you know the guy on the right, Terry Beast Mode, he was on DRL for a while. You may have seen him on there. But we were just competing at a race this weekend, so that was a race I took first place at. I'm pretty proud of that. But I'm a team pilot for Team HeliNation. So one of the premier stores out there if you want to buy drone parts, helination.com. I'm also a team pilot for Detroit Multi-Rotor Company. So that's me. You'll also see, I'm kind of a big deal. But this is the current global leaderboard standing, so I'm currently number 4 on the list. It's kind of small, but that is me, Johnny Fly Chapman. Also about me, I'm also a board member for Detroit Drone Racing Inc. So Detroit Drone Racing Inc. is basically the local multi-GP chapter. We're a non-profit organization trying to bring and grow drone racing, expose it to more people, and help people get involved. We also do some work about teaching how to build and sort of STEM education related to drone racing. But I'm one of the board members. I'm one of the founders of the nonprofit, and that's what we do. So that's Detroit Drone Racing. Have certain sponsors like XLRC, you see they're on our custom gates. With that, they're a local store, so if you want to go somewhere local, see drones firsthand, try out the goggles. XLRC in Garden City, they're a great spot to go to. Now, when it comes to drones, there's kind of different things you see people doing with drones. Obviously, the classic one you see is kind of those big, we call them cows of the sky, but the DJI drones take pretty pictures, right? So that's the one you see over there on the right side. In the middle, you have what we know as freestyle. This is originally what got me kind of hooked to the idea of FPV drone racing. It was this idea that I could put on a set of goggles and fly like a bird wherever I wanted, right? So I can have an out-of-body experience and fly through certain structures, see things I've never seen before, and that's what got me started. But then I went to a race and competed against people, and I'm a competitive person, and once I did that, I never want to do anything else. So extremely hooked on drone racing. This video here, I'm going to show it real quick. This I saw, I think, in 2014. So this was a group of guys back in 2014 in France. You know what? I'll do the music anyway, too. And this was like Star Wars to me when I first saw this. I knew it was happening. It was showing from a first-person perspective, people flying through the forest, racing each other, these LEDs, and like, I used to show this to everyone I knew, my coworkers. Look at this, look what's possible. Oh my God, they're flying from these things. And I spent 2 years telling people how amazing this is. I talked about how it worked, but I never tried it myself because I thought it'd be way too hard. I was like, I could never do this. Oh my God, can you imagine going through the woods? No way I could ever do that. So that right now in drone racing is my biggest regret in the whole thing, is that I took 2 years where I said I could never do it. When I finally tried it, I loved it more than I ever could have imagined, and I've been able to do it pretty well. So if it's something you want to try and get into, you can absolutely do it just like I could, even though I thought I'd never be able to. So that's this video. This is the first thing that really got me hooked. All right. Sorry. All right. So different types of drones. I have 2 different pictures up here. One is a tiny one. I wish I had them in here in person. If you're really curious and you talk to me later, I can probably bring it to the next meeting. You can see what these things look like. So the one on the right is 65 millimeters motor to motor. So it's about this big, okay? And it has a camera. You can fly that. It's a great learning tool. So when we did sessions building those and learning to fly them by the end. So it's an extremely safe way to learn how to fly drones. You learn the same exact mechanics, yet you can fly them indoors, you can fly it at your house, you can fly it around people without worrying about hitting them and hurting them. The one on the left is the drone I actually raced this weekend at that race I showed the picture from. That drone will go about 120 miles an hour. It'll go 0 to 120 in about 1 second. They're extremely fast and extremely dangerous. Okay, so you hit someone with that, they can do a lot of damage. Those propellers spin, I think, 40, 50,000 RPM. They're hard plastic, they will cut you. So that's where the real fun's at, but it's great to learn and get started with these tiny ones. It's the same sort of skills that translates it. You always know, too, when I master this, I can always go and do the other one. So these FPV cameras, so the whole idea is transporting yourself into the drone and seeing what the drone sees. So what actually happens here is you have a very low resolution camera feed. What you're seeing is standard NTSC broadcast, which is like having a little TV broadcast inside of your drone. And the cameras that made it possible for us, that camera on the left, it's actually a backup camera or a security camera, from cars. So once cars started putting them in there, they got really cheap, so we could buy them too and put them in drones. So, thank you to the cars for putting them in there, but that's basically the level of feed you're getting. Now, for seeing it, these are the goggles that we actually wear on our face. They're very small, compact. When you put these things on, everything else in the world, goes away, and all you see is what's coming out of that drone. So some would say it's like, oh, it's like VR, but the difference is this thing's actually real, right? You're not seeing a virtual world, you're in the real world with this. These are what the radios look like, so this is what we use to control. So it's basically on the left, we have the ability to do a throttle and then a yaw to turn left and right. And on the right, we're able to pitch the quad forward and then roll it left and right. So the big difference in flying these sorts of drones versus flying, let's say, a DJI has a GPS. You tell it, go higher, go lower, go forward, go backwards. These drones don't understand any of that. They don't understand altitude. They don't understand holding position. They don't understand going forward. All they understand is how to roll and how to do throttle. That's all you get. So it's a bit more complicated to step up to this level from DJI, but it's a whole heck of a lot more fun. So I want to talk briefly about this feeling of flight that you have. So when I first started, like I said, I really wanted to do freestyle, is what we call it. Just go out, find a place, and just fly around. These are all these. So this was me flying at, I forget what this place is, but it's in Detroit. I saw some cool obstacles. You know what? I just want to go and fly through things and spin around, and almost people kind of compare it to skateboarding, I guess. Finding a skate park, doing some tricks, seeing the world from a whole different perspective. This is all I used to do, okay? And it's a lot of fun. You get some cool footage. You put a GoPro on there. It's HD. It's a lot of fun. Now, what has happened since, that's when I first got started. I've now switched over to racing. So you notice when I'm racing, I get rid of having that GoPro because it's too heavy. It slows me down. So this is me running a course, I think, last weekend. You can see there's also a whole different level of speed involved when you're running this sort of course. So it can get very confusing and hard to follow, which is probably one of the things that's a little bit difficult with drone racing. But yeah, this is me running. And I will tell you, at the time I ran this, this was the fastest that anyone had ever ran this particular course. So this is actually a standard global qualifier. But yeah, it's a very, very intense, fast-paced sport. And it can get kind of dizzy. I should have warned you beforehand. So, what I will say is if you want to get started, a great way to get started is there's a number of FPV simulators. So basically, you take that same transmitter that I showed earlier, connect that with USB to your computer, and you can have the same experience inside of a computer simulator. So when you crash, it doesn't cost you money to rebuild things. You can learn the basics and then go buy something and try it out. So these are just 4 examples: FPV Freerider, Liftoff, DRL Sim, and Velocidrone. Personally, I like Velocidrone, but those are some good options to try. Now, this is a JavaScript user group. What does this have to do with JavaScript? Well, not much, okay? But what I will say is the firmware that I'm using inside of these drones is known as Betaflight, okay? So what you see there in the picture is the Betaflight configurator. So every configuration and setting you do on your drones happens inside the Betaflight configurator. The Betaflight configurator is a single-page JavaScript application, okay? It is also open source. So if you go to github.com, Betaflight, you have all the firmware, so you can work on the firmware for the drone, but you also can help out and contribute and build a single-page application to control how these drones fly. So if you you are interested from a JavaScript side and also interested in drones and how they work, it's a great way to get involved, help grow the community, and there is kind of, sort of, almost kind of a corollary to JavaScript. Now, how can I find more? So this is just for me. I do have a YouTube page. I go by Johnny Fly. What you can see there is I actually took 3rd place in the World Cup Championships last year. That was definitely a big moment for me. And then the second thing there is multigp.com. So MultiGP is the grassroots drone racing organization. That is what Detroit Drone Racing is a part of. So if you want to see these things live, if you want to go to an event, get involved, participate, MultiGP and Detroit Drone Racing is your place to go. And yeah, that's it. If you have any questions, you can find me after, find me at the bar. I love chatting about this stuff, and I love to chat with you. So thank you.
So thanks everyone for coming. That's all the lightning talks for today. We try to have a lightning talk before every main meetup event though, so if this seems like something you can do to get up and talk for 5 minutes about something that's kind of cool, let us know at speakers@SEM.js.org, and we'll sign you up for a 5-minute lightning talk in one of the upcoming events. Let's give another round to all of our presenters today. Awesome job! And I will say for all the presenters, if you don't mind, if you don't mind sharing the link to your slides, just put them in the comments for this meetup, and then everyone can find those and see all the links and be able to look through them on their own time. Thanks again, everyone. We'll be heading to MASH in a little bit, or if you want to stick around and talk to any of the presenters and ask any questions, now's a good time to do that too. So thanks, everyone.